Welcome back. We know that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, all non essential activities have been canceled and distancing has been put in place just to slow down or try to slow down the spread of this virus. But the question is, what kind of impact does this have on our mental health? Psychologist Kelly Horner is here to answer that question and more. Kelly, thanks so much for being with us. Let's start with that question. What kind of impact is physical distancing and isolation having on us?
It definitely, I think, would have a significant impact on people for a variety of reasons. So it could have for people who have already been dealing with depression and or anxiety, they could be experiencing shifts or changes in their anxiety. And people who have not had significant issues with anxiety or just depression could have shifts in that as well. I think it really will depend from person to person how the impact would be, and it can be unpredictable. And I think people need to be not just compassionate for others, but also compassionate with themselves about that as well. And I think it's important to think about, in general, there may be some twists with regards to this isolation that allow you to do some self-reflection and do some self-improvement and or picking up hobbies and things like that you like to enjoy, and viewing it as a way to get closer to people that you typically maybe have not had the time to. And those could be positive impacts of slowing down kind of our pace of living. But I think it is important that we do recognize that people can become more anxious or can experience an increase of anxiety and or shifts or decreases that are significant in their mood as well, and need to seek out supports and help, both professionally and within their support groups and support networks.
At this point, we really have no idea how long this social distancing and isolation will be going on for. So what are some of the major risks for people if this goes on for long periods of time?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about is just how we stay connected could be really different developmentally across different age groups. So, younger people, teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s may be very adept at staying in touch in a wider variety of ways, such as online, many ways of, connecting online that they've been doing for many years and very comfortable with. Whereas people who are older, may not have those abilities either through their capacity technology-wise, but even now at this point to be rushed in and try to develop those skills or those connections, it may take time. And some people also may really struggle with doing that. So that could actually further exacerbate someone's ability to kind of stay connected. So I think isolation in general, it really could, again, have an effect on a person's mood, on their anxiety level, even changes in a person who may be suffering with dementia. Social anxiety may also be increased, in even substance or alcohol use.
Kelly, you touched on the impact on older adults, and I just wanted to explore that a little more and ask whether you think these isolation techniques will have a more drastic impact on the older adults in our lives.
Yes, absolutely. There's two areas where I think it would have a much more drastic impact. One is, again, just how people can stay in touch. So, with elderly people who may not have had the means or the ability to kind of catch on or know the ways to keep in contact in online platforms. And so it may be very difficult to, acquire those things or have them in their place or get them set up if they haven't been set up. And also just, learning new tasks. It's much more difficult to learn new tasks. And people may get really frustrated both with their family members and their expectations of them to be able to get online, but they also may get upset or frustrated with their own selves. So, in those instances, I would suggest reverting back to kind of old school ways of using a telephone and calling them and trying to really meet them where they're at and their capabilities. The other thing is that a lot of elderly people may not really truly get the gravity of what's happening. So they may have their routines of going and going to the store or doing their routines to go outside. And really family members may really want to guide them to be more safe and cautious, particularly in that age group. They're saying don't go out at all. And so it really it creates struggles and or difficulties or conflict within family trying to get the elderly in their family or the older people in their family to stop or decrease doing those things.
Those who already are suffering from anxiety issues or obsessive compulsive disorder are particularly vulnerable. So what advice would you have for people who are trying to physically distance or isolate during this time? What should they be thinking of?
Well, I would definitely, want them to encourage them to stay aware and kind of vigilant about the effects that it may be having on increasing their symptoms. So, for instance, someone with obsessive compulsive disorder symptoms and or behaviors may be taking things to a bit more of an extreme, and it could really be having a negative impact on them, both physically and just time consumption wise. So clear example could be with hand washing. We're all being asked to increase our hand washing at a level that isn't typical and to pay attention to that. But with a person, it could increase it to the point where it's difficult or excessive and causing harm. So I would say listen to the guidelines, listen to yourself, do a check, and if it is your symptoms are increasing, definitely return to seeking out help and psychological and or mental health supports to help with that.
Kelly, we've been working at home for a month now. Are there markers? How do we know if isolation and the techniques that we've had to put into play are having a negative impact on our well-being?
So one of the things I would really recommend is that people do, we've talked a lot, and I think there's been out there a lot of recommendations to kind of put routines into your life. So I would encourage people to kind of think about and reflect on, are they having some healthy routines in their life, and are they able to kind of continue to incorporate them? Like, we're not going to be perfect, but continuing to circle back and incorporate them. And I really would recommend, as part of those things, those routines, is to really incorporate a check-in with your own self, maybe not daily, but at least weekly, kind of saying, how did I do this week? How am I feeling? Am I managing, my mood? Is it decreasing or increasing? Or am I, finding that I'm having difficulty with increases in my anxiety? And what are the things that I can kind of alter or tweak and add in as far as coping strategies to find relaxation or distraction or pleasurable activities? So that's important, that people continue to kind of evolve and kind of check in with those sorts of things. I think that would be very important.
The impact on couples while isolating can be huge. Is there such a thing, Kelly, as too much time with a partner?
Yes, I think that there is. Absolutely. It's an unpredictable and unprecedented amount of time, for new couples and for, couples across the range. And certainly, folks who are in retirement, when they finally retire, experience this. So I would say absolutely. So it's really important just to have clear and honest and open communication, particularly around having time alone and what that time alone or space alone would look like for each of you. So I would just encourage people to, continue to have open conversations about whatever level of space you may have. You're going to need to have some time alone. And so really carving that out would be a key important thing to do.
We only have about a minute left, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on what impact these habits may have on ourselves, on our mental health, on our children's mental health, perhaps even when this is all over, when we, return to quote unquote normal life.
I think the thing that we want to be paying attention to is that there are going to be a variety of reactions to this. So there are going to be some people who will pick up and just kind of enter back into their lives and be able to know and reflect back that this thing happened, and they kind of carry on. But then there are going to be people who may have really lingering effects as a result of this, or may have difficulty with making the transition either incrementally or suddenly. And so really having compassion and support for those people, and recognizing that there may be a rise or change in people's comfortability about being around bigger crowds, or how they're dealing with germs or things like that. There may be some lingering effects. And so really, as a society, as people in general, being compassionate about that with each other, that it will really vary.
Thanks so much for this important information, Kelly. And a recap of what we've discussed will be up on our website after the show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.